So there are a few things. One thing is that very early in my career, I realized that consistency is key to whatever you do. So I never really believed in talent. I think that talent only gives you a head start. You might get ahead of some people in the beginning if you are really talented at something, but if you're not consistent, if you don't put in the hard work, then you would slowly fade out. And so I believe this is my motto. I say consistency outpaces talent.
Hey friends, welcome to Product Stories, the podcast that delves into the minds of product and design folks to talk about their stories, challenges, and work. My name is Kaushik, and in each episode, I talk to my guests to find out how they work, the process they follow, learn about new tools, and understand the breakthroughs they have had in their career. This week, our guest is Darshan Gajara, who's currently the head of design at GraphCMS in Berlin. He also runs a newsletter called as Product Disrupt, which helps designers find resources and stories on design and tech. We take a deep dive into his journey of moving abroad to work in Berlin, how he runs Product Disrupt, and few stories from his freelancing days. So sit back and relax, make a cup of coffee or tea, and enjoy the episode. Hey Darshan, welcome to Product Stories. I'm so happy to have you here. You are one of those designers who I started following when I was starting designing, and I'm so happy to have you here. And I mean, I've been following your work for so long, especially with Product Disrupt and how you started working in Berlin with GraphCMS and everything. It's wonderful to have you here. I would love it if you would introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure thing, Kaushik, and glad to be here. I'm glad to hear that you have followed my work and found it useful, maybe. So, a little bit about me. My name is Darshan. Uh, I'm a designer and maker. I currently live in Berlin. I moved to Berlin about 2 years ago from Mumbai, and I'm working as a head of design at GraphCMS, which is a GraphQL native content management system. And I also have a side project called as Product Disrupt, which is a curated list of resources to learn product design from the internet. I've been running this side project for about 5 years now, and it's been a wild ride. Uh, that's it.
Great, great. I mean, one thing which I love about Product Disrupt and in your journey, especially, is the fact how you are building in public. At the same time, your newsletter. It's something which I always look forward to. And I'm just so glad you're doing this. Like, it was the list of resources which you have compiled was super helpful when I myself was getting started with designing. And even today, whenever a lot of folks reach out to me um, to figure out, like, how to get started with product design, Product Disrupt is one of those few resources which I'm always, like, sharing or referring. So yeah, I would really love to know the story of how it all started, right? It's such a useful resource. It's such a well thought out idea. So yeah.
Thanks for the kind words. It's the reason, it's the words like this for which I still continue working on this. It's been not more than 5 years now. So to give you an idea about how it all started, I would have to take you to a few years back. So I graduated from an engineering college in the year 2015 from Mumbai. And as you can imagine, since I was studying computer engineering, I didn't actually know what design was. So while I was in my fourth year of engineering, I had started doing freelance projects because I was too bored of what they were teaching me at college. So I just started looking for things on the internet while I wanted to do this. And while making the websites, I really used to enjoy the process of designing those websites. And then I slowly got to know that there's also this thing called as design, which is what I was passionate about. So I wanted to explore more, and I went on the internet and started looking at the resources. There are a lot of good people on the internet who would share their work process and case studies and their ideas through different mediums like a blog post, a newsletter, a podcast, a YouTube video. There are so many ways that you can learn something, right? And I definitely wanted to learn from that because I wanted to learn from the best of the best, and I knew that that was not going to be possible in any physical college in India. And of course, after doing 4 years of engineering, I didn't wanted to go to another college again. So I just kept on doing this, and eventually I became a designer. And so what happened was, when I started working as a designer professionally, a lot of my friends who came from engineering background, they had no clue of what design was. I think this was year 2016 or 2017, and design was still not really a thing in India. So a lot of my friends, they were confused. They used to ask me that, what do you even do in your day-to-day job, or what does even design mean? And a lot of them, seeing that I was making some progress in my career, they also were interested in it. They wanted to understand how to become a designer. So because I used to get asked these questions quite constantly, and I was always answering them the same repetitive answers, I thought that I could, just create a website where I could put together a list of resources that I was following. And I already had this list, right? I was already referring to these resources to learn myself. And So I already had this. What I had to do was just make a website where they could access it on their own. And sure, other people could also access that, because once you put it on the internet, it takes a life of its own. And that's why one weekend, while I was at my second company, I just thought that I would make a website. And I got a framework together. So there was this kind of a template that I had bought. Uh, so I started using that. I customized it. I created like a custom design for that, and I put it out there.
Great. Well, was that template one of the WordPress templates which, was very popular those days?
No, 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 not really. So, by the way, you can still see the old version of Product Disrupt. If you go to productdisrupt.com and you do /v1, you would actually see the old version. And
Oh,
I've still kept it there, just like an Easter egg. So people who listen to your podcast, they might get this Easter egg. So this website is just like it's a simple template created through HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript. It's a very simple template. So I just bought. I think I bought it from this company called Craftwork.
hmm.
They also have the products on UI8, which is another marketplace. And it was a very simple, straightforward template where you could have like sections, and you could put them together to create a website. I obviously did some customization on top of it. I also took some help from a friend of mine and added some JavaScript animation on the homepage. So when if you're actually opening it in a mobile, and if you move the mobile phone, it would
Hmm.
actually you would see those small particles, like, because it's called Product Disrupt, right? So I wanted to have
Yeah.
that disrupt feeling. So those particles would actually start moving.
That's amazing. Um, but like zooming out a bit, you know, from the time you started Product Stories to now, I guess it's been easily 4 or 5 years, right? If I'm not wrong.
Mhm.
And throughout these 4 or 5 years, you have been consistently at it, and you have been, um, constantly, regularly releasing your newsletters and all these things. So, what is it that kept you motivated, and what is it that you love about side projects? That's something I really wanted to know.
So there are a few things. One thing is that very early in my career, I realized that consistency is key to whatever you do. So I never really believed in talent. I think that talent only gives you a head start. You might get ahead of some people in the beginning if you are really talented at something, but if you're not consistent, if you don't put in the hard work, then you would slowly fade out. And so I believe this is my motto. I say consistency outpaces talent. I've even made a poster on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I have that everywhere because it's something that I very strongly believe. So I think that if I want to create something beautiful or meaningful, I have to be consistent at it, which is why whatever I do in my life, I try to stay consistent at it. Because I know that you can only start seeing the results of something after you've done something for a few years consistently. So that's one of the reasons. And the second is that uh, in order to stay motivated to work on a side project, you also have to build some kind of momentum. Because when you're starting a new project, you it's a very nice feeling, and it might seem very glamorous in the beginning. So
Yeah.
everyone is excited to start a project, but once you have started it, it's very hard to maintain that. Now if you want to maintain that, I think if you build momentum, which means that you have something which is out there, you're constantly getting feedback on it, or you're seeing traction on it, the project is also making some progress slowly, or maybe if you start monetizing it and it starts making money, that means it also becomes sustainable. So there are these few elements. If you do that, and if you see the momentum, then it becomes easier to manage. So for me right now, because it's been 5 years, I've made the project sustainable now, and I also have a system in place. Right, I've been doing this for 5 years now. So writing a newsletter, it doesn't take me as much time as it would have taken me 5 years ago. I've obviously improved my process through the years, and all these things, when they come together, I think it becomes easier to stay motivated to work on something.
Yeah, true. I think something which, like, Ali Abdal talks about, he's one of the creators I follow a lot, is that he talks about this thing where in the beginning days, like, when you're getting started, the amount of effort you put is actually, like, so much more. And over the years, as you keep growing, and you kind of start forgetting, like, how much effort you have been putting from day one, because, like, you're setting up these processes and everything. At the same time, you're moved on to different things, right? So that's like the first thing that came to my mind when you told, like, it does not take me the same amount of time or energy that, creating a newsletter took me 5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agree with that.
Yeah. So on the same lines, right? During, the whole pandemic, from the whole work from home situation and everything, suddenly a lot of people had uh, quite a good amount of time on their hands to, work on a side project or a passion project which they always wanted to do. And something which I have also been seeing with more and more young designers today is that they want to start more side projects, or they want to use these side projects as a method to learn a new skill, or something on those lines. So, but one of the things which I've heard everyone struggle is, like, how do you even come up with like, in the initial idea for your side project? How do you decide which one to go with? What kind of advice would you give for someone like that?
So there are a few ways that you could approach this. So one is that, and I think this is actually the best way according to me. If you have your own problem, if you're trying to solve your own problem, the solution kind of becomes obvious, and you can much more relate to that. So in my case, what was my problem? My problem was that I was too bored of answering the same questions over and over again. But I also wanted to help people. So that was my problem. And which is why I started Product Disrupt. So I was just trying to solve my own problem. And when you have something like this, it becomes you would obviously relate much more to the problem that you're having. And and the beauty about this is that when you create something which is going to solve your problem, even if it doesn't go on to be like a huge product that a lot of people use, it's still going to solve the problem of that one person, which is you. So you've still achieved something. But that might, and I think it's not that difficult to identify that, because if you on a regular basis, you might have come across so many problems. And if you are a designer, if you are a maker or a developer, there are many ways that you could do something to solve that problem, right? And it doesn't have to be a big problem. It could be something as small as you not being able to remember that you have to work out. So maybe you want to build a habit, and you can build something to cultivate that habit. Uh, so the first thing that I would suggest is to start looking inward. Uh, I mean, a lot of times what happens is that you have a lot of problems, but you kind of ignore it because you have accepted that this is how it is, and you have accepted the way of life, and you might not even think twice about it. But as a designer, I think you kind of have to flex that critical muscle where you have to see things in a different light. And if you start seeing those things, start identifying that, you might discover a lot of problems that you have, and then you can start solving that. Now, the second thing, if you tell me that you don't have any of your personal problems, or they're not as exciting enough to work on it, you can start looking outward. So do your friends have a problem? You can start asking your friends if they have any smaller problems that they deal with, which you could work on. Now here you have to remember that the problem shouldn't be very big, otherwise it's too much for you to uh, like create a side project around it. It should be something which is solvable but which is quite small. So you start asking them, and you, if you're a designer, I'm sure you would have friends who are engineers or product managers or marketers, and those people might have some problems which design could solve, and you as a designer could bring that expertise. So if you start looking at their problems from a designer's lens, you would also get an idea from there. And even if, like, say you don't find anything over there as well with this approach, the third way is that you can start asking, do your friends of friends have problem? So okay, you start asking them that if you if their friends have encountered something on a regular basis, and something that they get annoyed by, and then they wish that that was a solution for that, and that could be an idea. And if that's also not possible, we live in an age where you have internet, you have access to billions of people, right? You just go out there, join communities, and one of the community that I would strongly recommend joining is indie hackers. These people, they are creators, so they and they're also very collaborative. They usually keep on talking about things like this. So when you join that community, you're automatically going to start identifying some problems that you could start working on. And you could also join communities on Facebook, your local communities. It doesn't, you don't have to restrict yourself to something, but the thing is that you take action, you be involved. uh, there needs to be some action happening over here, only then you're going to see that. And also, the last thing that I would mention is that you actually don't have to solve a problem to build a side project, right? A side project is, I personally think that side project for me is an outlet for expression or creativity. So when you want to explore something, when you want to express something which you might not be allowed to do in your day job, you could do that through a side project. And it doesn't even have to solve anyone's problem. uh, it can be a very casual thing, a very fun thing. Side projects are meant to be stupid in the beginning. So now imagine if you are into watching a lot of shows on Netflix, and you are a designer. You might want to and you obviously see a lot of those posters, right? You might want to give your own twist to it. You want to redesign those posters in your own style. That could be a side project. Redesigning side projects, it's, if it's something that gives you joy, then do it. Why not? uh, don't go for solving the problems in the beginning. So there are many ways to go about it. uh, One advice is that it's important that you start somewhere. uh, do not get hung up on uh, identifying the problem in the beginning. If you don't start, uh, you're probably not going to find the side project that you want to work on. It's about failures, it's about the journey.
Yeah, completely true. I mean, especially the part about, like, if the side project is not fun, it can also be something which is fun and not just about, solving a problem or creating something that is always utilitarian, right? At the same time, I really like the fact that you mentioned indie hackers. It's one of my favorite podcasts. I love listening to all the amazing stories that are there on indie hackers. It's definitely one of my highly recommended podcasts, as well as communities as well. Um, on the same lines, right? So you have been working on this side project, which is, product disrupt. It's a newsletter, everything. But at the same time, you also have a day job where, it which requires, like, equally high commitment and everything. So how do you actually manage between both of these things? How do you, and I'm if I'm not wrong, you also freelance in the middle for quite some time. So how did you manage all of these things while, like, consistently working on your side project?
Yeah, so there's no silver bullet over here. It's just hard. It's really hard. And it's a matter of a lot of sacrifices and ruthless prioritization. To give you some clarification, I usually only do two things at a time. So when I was working as a consultant, then I was doing freelance projects because that's what I do as a consultant, and working on product disrupt. Now that I have a full-time job, I do full-time job and product disrupt. I don't have time for freelancing anymore. So it's always two things. And uh, I would just say that there are a lot of things that I have to sacrifice. Like I can't. Everybody just gets 24 hours in a day, right? I can't magically create more time for me. What I have to do is, if I imagine, if you're someone who watches 2 hours of Netflix every day, then I'm just giving an example, by the way, not to be too literal. In my case, I would just do it 1 hour a day then, and the other 1 hour I would try to dedicate that to side projects. And so it's just that. And the thing is that I build a system around it. So I try to break down things into smaller pieces or smaller chunks, so that it's not as daunting of a task to work on. Because what happens is that if you have something which already feels huge, and you know that it's going to be like a time suck. Once you start working on it, it's going to consume a lot of your time. In that case, you're not even going to have the motivation to actually pick that up. So I try to break that into smaller things. So whenever I have some little chunks of time, I'm able to work on those things because I have a system in place. I have broken it down into smaller pieces. So I'm getting something done, right? And once I keep on doing the smaller things, I'm building that momentum. And I would say this again, like momentum is very crucial when you're working on things like this, where you don't have like extrinsic motivation or extrinsic triggers. With a full-time job, you have to work, right? That is why you're getting paid. So it's very easy that you would do the work, irrespective of the nature of the work. That could be difficult or easy, but working doing the work is not going to be hard. In case of side projects or personal projects, they're your personal thing. You don't really have anyone. You're not accountable to anyone, so that makes it quite difficult. uh, so uh, I would just say that build systems around that, and take a very deep look at your schedule or the things that you do in a day, and start identifying the things that matter to you, the things that don't matter to you. And you have to be very ruthless with that. Once you start cleaning up your schedule, you start to see the time, the chunks of time that you never saw before. So it's just that.
Yeah. I'm just curious, like, the whole rule of two things which you have, is that, like, one of the reasons why you have, like, try to not start like multiple side projects, which is like a common thing which I've noticed in, like, creators or makers in general, where they try to create, like, more things regularly. But what I've noticed is that you have always worked on product disrupt and compounded all your efforts into uh, one project.
Yeah, so well, it's not exactly like that, and it's not a rule. It's just that if I do these two things, I don't have time for other things. I actually have worked on other side projects as well, which you might not be aware of because they don't take that much of my time or the limelight as product disrupt would take. So right now, I'm actually working on two other side projects. So one of them is creating a Notion resource for anyone to find a job abroad and move abroad with a job. I'm working with a friend of mine on this one. Then the other resources that is about cracking a product design interview. There is also going to be a Notion resource uh, with all the material and resources that you could use to crack a design interview. So there are those projects, but it's that and I also do. I started a YouTube channel, so I have been doing some podcast, slowly getting into it. So there's a there are quite a few things going on. Uh, what I try to do is with product disrupt, I know that some cadence has to be there because the commitment over there is straightforward. The website that I've made, it's like a one time thing, right? First I made the website in 2017, I think, and then I relaunched it, like created a redesigned version of it after 3 years, I think. So and that actually requires a lot of work when I'm doing that, but once that's done, I don't have to do much work on it. Okay, here and there I would just update the list and maybe curate, maybe refresh the curation, but it doesn't require that much work. With the newsletter, there's a strict cadence to it. Like I have a commitment sending out a newsletter every 2 weeks, and there's a very straightforward process with that. So whenever I have to send out the newsletter, I know that in order to prepare that, I have to spend about 3 to 4 hours on that when I create that, and that's it. Once that's taken care of, then I don't have to worry about many other things. With other side projects, it's kind of difficult, which is why it's actually been taking me a lot of time to work on them, because I don't have that cadence, I don't have that accountability. With product disrupt also, a sponsor would also pay for a sponsorship spot in the newsletter, so I directly have a commitment, I have to send out the newsletter. uh, so yeah, this is how it works.
Yeah, it's interesting. But in this, the whole working abroad thing, I remember you wanted to work on it last year itself, if I'm not wrong. I remember listening about it probably in your episode or something with Rob Hope, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly right.
yeah, I have been looking forward to it for quite some time.
Yeah, sorry about it. I actually feel guilty every time I talk about it, and I don't have something to show. And it is this thing that I started this project last year. My partner, he's actually based in Australia, so we have a
Mm.
significant time difference as well. We try to work asynchronously, but sometimes we also have to do some sync work. Uh, the good news that I can give you is that we have started working on it again, and we have actually made a lot of progress in the past 2 weeks. And we are planning to, if everything goes well, uh, we might be able to do like an early launch in February. For people who have signed up for the early access, they would get it at a discounted price. Uh, so that is what we are trying to do, but let's see how it goes.
Yeah, you even have a website for the early access, right? So I think I'll just drop it in the description. So for
Thanks a
anyone
lot.
who is looking to move abroad or considering it, yeah, they can definitely go check it out. But
Yeah.
I would also love to know your journey about how you moved abroad. I remember you were after living in Mumbai for quite some time, you were also traveling. Then you moved to Berlin and everything, right? So I would love to know that story.
Yeah, it's actually been a long journey, and I think it's actually a very long story. I would try to keep it short, respecting the uh, time commitment that we have for the podcast. So, uh, when I was at my second job in Mumbai, uh, until that point, I had actually seen significant growth in my career, or I was learning things exponentially, and which is what kept me very excited. But after a certain point, uh, my my learning curve was actually like a straight line. I was not learning too many new things, and I wanted to work on global products, face new challenges, and I also wanted to have an experience of working outside of India. So, which is why I quit my job and I started looking for something outside of India. Uh, and just within 2 months, I actually found a contract job in Berlin. uh, so they were like a startup boot camp. They wanted me to be like an entrepreneur in residence and help the startups over there for about 3 months. But unfortunately, the visa didn't work out. So the embassy, they were like, "You're a freelancer. We don't think you, once you go there, you're going to come back." And they didn't want you to give me the visa. So I had like three visa rejections, even though I had all the documents and everything, and I couldn't really do much. And that broke me in a very different way. Like I was never broken before. And it was a very big rejection for me because up until that point, I had not seen many rejections. So and I was kind of depressed about it. I actually didn't wanted to even touch my laptop during that time. So for 1 week, I had not even touched my laptop. I just went home and spent some time with my family. And then I thought that if I can't move there, doesn't mean that I can also not travel, right? So I thought I would start traveling and I would carry my work along with me because all I needed was a laptop. And I had actually been doing this. I've been doing this remote work before it was cool. So it's been what 5 years of remote work for me, I think. And that is when I came across this whole concept of digital nomads and people working remotely and traveling to different places. And the experience that I had, so I'd gone to Thailand for a month. Uh, After that, while I had a client in Mumbai, I was working with them remotely from Thailand. And that experience, the people that I've met over there, and the stories that I got to know from them, it changed me as a person, I would say. Uh, because I came across some stories which were very very hard. Like I remember thinking to myself that I've just been living in a bubble of mine, where I was thinking that something very bad had happened with me. But after hearing the stories of these other people, I was like, there was nothing. I have to man up and I have to get out of this. So I just like it was a very welcoming change for me, and I also started liking travel very much after that trip because it gave me so much. So I thought that I would just keep on doing this. I would travel and I would work as a consultant. So I usually used to work on long term projects. So working with clients as an external design expert. You can think of it like a external team member, and it was working out very well. I was getting paid a good amount of money, the amount of money that would support me in my aspirations, and I just kept on traveling to different places and working with customers from all over the world, actually. And the journey was quite beautiful. But at this time, I also kept applying to abroad jobs, not actively as I was in the beginning, but I still, whenever I used to come across a good opportunity, I would still just check it out. But it didn't really work out. I got many rejections, and the reasons were quite weird. A lot of times, we could get into that some other day. Uh, so after the at the end of the 3 year mark, I thought I would give it a last shot. Like it was getting quite difficult. I was looking for some stability, and I thought that I would now apply for a few companies. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, then I would maybe take up a job elsewhere. Uh, so during that time, fortunately, I actually managed to get like three offers from the companies all at once. Imagine not a single offer in 3 years, and then I have three. That is how it works, perhaps. And when that happened, I was able to move to Berlin. I got relocated over here with the new job, and I started my journey working abroad.
Amazing. Is there any particular reason you wanted to move to Germany in particular?
So Germany, not very much, but Berlin. In my research, I had identified Berlin and Amsterdam as two places which are very good for outsiders. Like they have a very welcoming culture. There are a lot of international people over here. It's a very international city,
Yeah.
and Berlin and Amsterdam, they both have a booming startup culture. There are a lot of companies over here who are trying to do something innovative, and it's slowly developing as a startup capital of Europe. And they are both very good that way. Language is not a barrier over here. You can get by just fine if you only talk in English, both in Amsterdam and in Berlin. So while I was and before moving here, I'd also done like a Euro trip where I traveled through across a few countries in Europe for a month, and I also spent some time in Amsterdam and Berlin, and they were exactly what I thought they would be. My experience was beautiful, and I could easily see myself moving to one of these places. Uh, they are both equally good, I would say. But with Berlin, there's something very special about the city. Like it's a very non-pretentious and a very different city than other parts of the world. I have done like a decent bit of traveling, uh, and the vibe that I got from this place, uh, it spoke to me, and I could see myself working here. So I just moved here.
Yeah, that sounds very nice, and I'm glad you found a place which which you really like. Now, actually, like my next question or topic which I had in mind was like how would you recommend any designer who probably wants to move abroad? Like what tips would you top down? I already know that you're creating this entire resource about it, so what I would probably ask is like, if you could probably share a snippet of it so that, the people who actually want to do it will, realize that, hey, I should probably get this resource for myself.
Yeah, it's a very timely question because I've been working on this very recently. The ideas are quite fresh in my head. So, a few things that I think could help you out is that it's it's difficult to find a job abroad which will relocate you and sponsor your visa when you're very early in your career. Because people are usually looking for kind of experts or people who know what they're doing, so they don't want to spend a lot of time training them. And uh, and also, if you think of it from their perspective, when they make a hire outside of their own country, they're actually investing significant amount of resources into that, right? The resources of the time, the resources of the time and money. So people who help you out with the relocation and the money that is required, because if they were to make a local hire, it would be much more simpler, right? And uh, and also the other thing is that there's also a lot of this mental pain which is sometimes we don't go through, and which means that all the investment that you have made might all go in vain. So uh, that's why only when they don't find a someone who is of say equal caliber locally, they would look for someone who is from the outside. And the good thing is that uh, Europe is in a huge need of people in tech. Europe has not really been known for its technological advancements, and now I think it has woken up to it, and which is why they need a lot of people in technology. If you are someone who works in tech, it's a great time to move to Europe. You would find a lot of opportunities. So, for this reason, I wouldn't suggest someone to start looking for a job abroad right from the get go. Uh, Maybe spend like at least 1 year or 2 year, or maybe 3 year, like get some experience, and that would increase your chances of being hired, because most of the times the roles that you would see would be of a mid level or senior level. So if you are already on that level, your chances would be higher. And the second thing is that You might want to look at the companies which are larger in size, because they might already have a lot of experience in moving people abroad. So if you look at some companies, it can also apply to smaller startups as well. But the only thing that you want to look for is that, does the company have enough diversity in their team? Have they already made hires from the outside? Now, if they have done that, that means they already have a process to deal with those things. They might already have a department who would be looking into visas and relocations, and it's a lot of trouble, believe me, especially if you are coming from a developing country like India. A passport is shit. It doesn't help you out in any way. And I've had a fair share of my trouble with visas. So uh, you want to look at the companies who have already relocated some people over there. That means when they are looking for the talent, they're actually just they're purely judging you on the basis of merit, because they don't know that relocating is not an issue for them. With other companies, they might have a lot of issues with visas. Like, they don't have people uh, who would have expertise or dedicated into doing that for you. They also have to invest significant amount of funds in that. So that means that they might not want to go through all that trouble. And usually, this if the company is small, they also need people uh, to start like immediately or as soon as possible, right? If you have to go through the process of visa, that means that you're going to take more time to relocate there. So start looking at companies which already have a diverse teams and already have moved people. There are always exceptions, but you might want to bet on something which is trusted and tried, right? And once you move here, if you don't enjoy working at a larger company, you can always move. You can always change the company. Once you're here, then changing companies is quite easier, but it's very difficult from India. So that's the second thing. The third thing is I would say is that you might also want to look into the cultural differences that are there in the working style of Europe and working style of India. Uh, it's it's just different. Nothing is it's not good or bad, I would say. Indians work very differently. They have a certain way of working. There are many cultural differences when you work with a European company. uh, so you might want to start reading online or watching some videos or getting those subtle clues and understanding how these countries are culturally different. And once you do that, what would happen is you would the way that you approach your interviews, the way that you perform in your interviews might change, because you're already aware of those smaller cues, and those are small things. It's not that easy to get a hang of it, but if you can spend some time, then why not, right? There's enough research available online. There are enough resources available online. So doing that would also help. uh, and I would say, if you are an engineer, actually your job is it's going to be very easy for you as compared to a product manager or a designer or other people in tech, because it's just the truth is that the Europe has a huge demand for engineers. There's a lot of a requirement in the market, and they would be willing to hire subpar or below par engineers as well, and even pay them a higher salary, because they don't find enough engineers over here. uh, that is not to say that the job market is difficult for designers, but it's just easier for engineers. So if you are someone who already know that you want to move abroad, and you're starting out, maybe you should opt for engineering.
Yeah, I guess the demand for engineers has just significantly grown in the past few years.
Yeah, engineers can get BMWs in India, and they can get a job abroad quite easily.
Yeah, great time to be an engineer, actually. I was just remembering this thing I've read about Amsterdam. They also have a more favorable tax policy if you're if you're working in a tech company for the first few years of your stay. So I remember reading something on those lines. I was just
Yeah.
recollecting it when you spoke about Amsterdam and Berlin being good.
So I don't think it's limited to you working in tech. That policy is actually for outsiders. So when you are someone who is moving to Amsterdam from a different country, uh, and the rule is something like you still have to pay like a higher tax, which is 40%. But what happens is that you you have to pay tax only on 80 or 70% of your salary instead of your full salary for a few years, because I think I'm not an expert in this, but what I believe is that uh, you get a lot of benefits when you pay taxes over here. It's actually, I think the tax system here is good actually. uh, so if you have been paying taxes here for some time, your kids actually get to do free schooling, and they can also have pursue further education. Universities that will also be free, they get a lot of other benefits as well. And because so that means that if someone has contributed to the tax system, they get these benefits. But you, when you're moving there from the outside, you have not gotten any benefits, but you are going to pay a very high tax. So I think, which is why they want to ease your arrival in the country. And the good thing is, a lot of these cities are actually becoming pro immigration. Because there's a huge demand, they're also easing off their laws. uh, and it is becoming much more and more easier for immigrants to move to these places, because there's a demand for that. So I think it's a great thing. There's I don't think anyone I think everyone benefits from diversity.
True, true. Um, yeah, I'll just probably zoom out a bit and ask you this one question which I had in my mind. While you were talking about moving to Berlin and everything, I started thinking about GraphCMS. It's definitely one of the really good CMS tools I've used personally. So yeah, I mean, I love how beautifully it's designed. Usually, most the CMS products which at least I've used have always been a bit clunky or very hard to get through or understand things. So I think Graph CMS does that extremely well. On the other hand, you started out with Graph CMS as probably the first designer. I'm not very sure on this,
That's
but
right.
yeah, but now you're the head of design and you've also started hiring people. You started building a team. How has this entire transition been?
Yeah. So, firstly, thanks a lot for your kind words. Our CEO would be glad to hear this. I would definitely relay this message. And the second thing is the second part of your question. So, I started at GraphCMS as a first designer, and which means I was responsible to do all things design. My core responsibility was to deliver end-to-end feature design work. But at the same time, I also started creating or building the design system, because it was obviously going to be uh, required at some point, right? So, and at that point, the goal for me to build a design system was actually to ease off the process for me. Uh, I can ship out more features if I already have a reusable component. So you could think of that design system as a component library. And from time to time, I also used to help our marketing team with marketing design. So I was doing all sorts of design. And after we raised a new round of funding, uh, we already had plans to do this. We just had to time it. After we raised a new round of funding, we started hiring more designers, and it was quite evident that we needed more people. So we started hiring depending upon the needs. So our marketing team, they had a lot of design needs, because they are they create a lot of content, and you have to support them with design when they're creating so much content. So I made my first hire, which was a marketing designer. So she kind of took all the responsibility from me of the marketing design. And she's someone who works very closely with the marketing team. And then we also brought in another product designer. After that, we also hired a motion graphics and video designer. And recently, we also made another product design hire. So now we are about a team of 5 people, including me. My responsibility right now is still 50-50, which means I spend half of my time doing the individual contribution work, which is mostly design systems and the feature design work. And the rest of my time is spent managing the team and overlooking the design at the whole company. And I'm constantly providing feedback and mentoring the people in my team. So that is what I'm doing right now, and the journey has been amazing. It's really I've always enjoyed working in smaller teams, and it really gives me a lot of joy. And this is also the time when I get to grow with the company. As the company grows, I also grow, right? uh, so transitioning into this role, it kind of felt very natural to me. And while joining the company, I already knew that this would be the path ahead, and I was actually actively working on it. So I also joined On Deck, which is a cohort for design management, where I get to connect with some industry experts and people who are on the similar journey. So I actively invest in my time into learning the things on the management track or the leadership track. And it's been a fun thing to do. It's very challenging, but I like challenging things.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like a wonderful journey. At the same time, I'm so glad that your organization is also growing, and at the same time you're able to grow with it. I think it's one of the most ideal positions to be in, and it's also very relatable for me as well, with how my company and my organization is progressing. So yeah, I mean it's really nice to know, and at the same time, um, how you're building your team and all these things. It's really great. So yeah, I have pretty much asked all the questions I had in mind. I would probably look for more questions and pick your brain or pick you on for ideas for some more time. But yeah, since our time is limited, um, I'll come to the end of the episode, which is I usually end my episodes by asking a bunch of rapid fire questions. So if
Okay.
you're if you're ready, we can just get started.
Yeah, let's bring up the heat.
Sure. Cool. So the first question, your favorite design project that you have worked on, among all the ones you have worked on.
It's kind of an easy one. When I was working as a consultant, I was consulting with this company called Sapad. They are a food tech company based in Dubai. They have their businesses all over Middle East, but they're headquartered in Dubai. And I got to work with them on 3 projects, and one of them was a project called Sapad Kitchen Display System, which is a product that people in the restaurant would use to fulfill the orders. So there's a screen which is placed inside the kitchen, and the people working inside the kitchen, the order fulfillers and the chefs, they get to see what are the orders that are made, and uh, then once the orders are completed, they also notify the waiter, who would then collect the order and put it on the table of the customers. Was a very unique project because I got to work on a tablet, a UI for a tablet, a UI for a TV screen, which was operated by a keypad, which is a very different kind of input device. And while doing this, I also got to travel to Dubai a couple of times and do user interviews, where I went to these restaurants and talked to the people working there, getting a feel of how things are in the restaurant. So uh, I really cherish the time that I had working on this.
Sounds wonderful. I'll just jump to the next question. One designer you'd really look up to.
Uh, Not really. A designer, he's a maker. Uh, so he's a designer and a maker, Pablo Stanley.
Mhm.
I just love how incredible this guy is. He keeps on putting out projects after projects, and they are so, and his projects are so different from one another. He, of course, has proven his mettle in product design. He's also been a co-founder, but he would also sometimes make wacky side projects like Pablito Planeta, which was uh, he pretending to be a astrologer, a design astrologer, and giving you design horoscope. And then he also made a music video. So that guy, he can do anything, and I really like those people who have multiple colors to themselves, and that's a designer and maker that I look up to.
Yeah, I think Pablo Stanley and probably even Jordan Singers are one of, like, the two makers who are extremely versatile with, like, what they do and how they work and the kind of projects they keep making. My next question was actually, like, your favorite creator or maker, but yeah, you've already
Well,
answered.
I can give you one more then.
Sure,
The
sure.
other one is Paul Jarvis. Uh, it's very difficult to find him online now because he had a personal brand for I think whole of his life, but now he has decided to not have his personal brand, which is why it's difficult to find him on the internet. He runs this company called Fathom Analytics. He's a co-founder there. Uh, this guy, he used to write a newsletter for many years. It was called Sunday Dispatches, where you got a newsletter from him every Sunday. It was one newsletter that I always look up, that I always looked for. I in my inbox, and I used to read each and every word of it, and the stories were so honest. The writing was so beautiful. I can connect very, I can connect very seamlessly with his ideas. I think he's a very thoughtful person, and he has a track record of building a lot of side projects which are all sustainable. He must have made more than millions on that. Uh, so the projects are sustainable, and those and they are very enjoyable projects. N- eh, I think he also has he's a very mission driven person. So I wish I could still get his newsletter, but he has stopped now. I respect that, uh, but I wish.
That's interesting. I don't know if I can, look him up as you said. But yeah, I'll
You
still
would,
try.
yeah, you would find a page where he would explain just this, that he doesn't have a personal brand now, and you can't find him elsewhere. And you'd find links to some of his articles, so you can still read like best of his articles, but nothing more than that.
I mean, still worth a shot. Great. So I'll move to my next question. Um, this is basically around product disrupt, but you can always choose to not answer it. So, you recently did, your year in review and you posted, like, product disrupt income in 2021, right? Um, if you could take a guess, how much do you think that is going to be in the year of 2022?
That's a difficult one, but looking at the growth that it has been having, and if I'm able to fill up all the sponsorship slots for the year, it should be somewhere around somewhere between 4,000 to 5,000, which is realistic. Uh, and if I want to just go for the moon, then it can also be 8,000 or 9,000 because it has been doubling, more than doubling in revenue.
Great. So I did have a backup question in case you didn't want to answer the previous one. So if you had to, like, worry about, like, nothing, whether it is in terms of career, money, or whatever, um, what would you be working on right now?
I would be working on many things. I would. This is actually a goal of mine. I'm working towards it. Working towards financial independence. Once I have that, I would just be working on smaller side projects, like building a portfolio of these tiny side projects that are sustainable in their own way. and which doesn't require a lot of my time. I want to build a lifestyle where I could decide that I don't want to work for a week and nothing breaks. Uh, so I want to build products like that which can run on themselves, and I want to diversify my projects.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for answering all the questions. And at the same time, it was absolutely wonderful having you here. There are so many things which I got for myself, like to understand about side projects and design and all the other things. It was really great. Thank you so much for just being on the podcast and also making it super easy for me to reach out to you and agreeing and everything.
I'm glad you find it useful. I had a great time as well, and thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Product Stories for more such episodes.